Okay. I think we can finish the class early today, and then we can talk about that. Okay, so announcements. Your exam 2 review sheet is posted, and the practice questions is posted too. Your quiz 8 will be available tonight. Wait, hold on. Are you sure that the exam is next week?
I'll check the syllabus right now.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
I think it was the 26th last time I checked.
Double check.
That's when it was supposed to be.
Oh, look out.
Okay. Yeah, because the syllabus updated.
Yeah, I'm checking the syllabus right now.
Okay.
I wrote them all down at the very beginning of the semester.
Okay. You should get the newest one.
Yeah, probably.
Your assignment 2 is due 29th, and some people have already submitted theirs. Assignment 2.
Already?
Yep.
It's
So
the 31st.
good job to do that. 31st, so it's not next week, right?
Yeah, no,
Because you shouldn't have quiz for that week.
it's the week that, it's the Wednesday,
That's next week.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're on track. And your extra credit assignment will be due Monday. Okay? All right.
Does it have to be, like, can you do a group of 3 or group of 2, or it has to be group of 4?
Group of 4.
Okay.
We'll just look at your yearbook.
Yeah, I know, I'm just missing it, dude.
Okay, so we're gonna start chapter 9 today. So I'm trying to move fast. Okay. Language. Human language, this is an open and symbolic communication system that has rules and grammar. And this allows us to express abstract and distant ideas. So the word open means that the system is dynamic and free to change. Symbolic means that there's no real connection between a sound and the meaning or idea associated with it. Does that make sense? Our language keeps evolving, it keeps changing, and then symbolic is that a lot of words, it's not like they have real meanings associated with what they mean. Okay? It's just a symbol. Okay? So human versus non-human communication. Human and other species all have the ability to communicate. It doesn't matter if they can speak or not, they can communicate. Like insects, they can communicate with each other. But there are 3 major advantages of human languages. You don't need to remember this for the exam. First, we have greater complexity. Our language system is more complicated and detailed. And our communication is intangibles. It means that it can refer things that do not actually exist, such as unicorns, politics, so abstract ideas. It also allows us to self-talk. So humans can use language to describe things to themselves. Sometimes it helps them to understand what's going on. Right? Sometimes when you read something, maybe you don't even realize it, you're telling yourself that story and describing the situation to yourself. Okay, so question, what would happen if we didn't have languages? Just imagine there's no languages.
I feel like we would still find a way of communicating somehow.
Okay, we will find a way to communicate, maybe through dance.
Yeah,
Isn't that
like-
also language in itself?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking.
Like, just using gestures, but it's still.
Yes. Let's say language here, we're specifically talking about human languages, not communication in general. Okay. I feel like it's going to be very hard to have a class, right?
Yeah.
I'll be like moving around, I'll be sweating all the time. People don't need to work out anymore because when they communicate, they just move around. Huh?
Give me charades.
So this is like kind of hard to imagine, right? It's very like a crazy idea. So there won't be any poetry, fictions, journalism, movies, songs, TV shows, and etc. I just don't have that. And we'll have very limited way to express our emotions, attitudes, and knowledge. Yes?
Well, isn't knowledge within itself also just an abstract concept that we couldn't explain without human language itself? Is the idea of knowledge?
Well, to an extent. Right now, I'm using language to give you guys knowledge. right?
If we didn't have language, then.
Oh, yeah. So it would be very limited.
Okay.
I can still show you how to do things, right? But it will be limited. There won't be any culture, maybe a little bit, so including shared beliefs, values, traditions, behavioral norms. It will be just so hard to communicate with other people. But most importantly, you won't have psychology class for me. So, all right, if you didn't get the joke, whatever. Okay, so building blocks of language. First, we have phonemes. That's the smallest unit of sound without meaning. Okay? So, for example, single letters such as A, B, C, D, those will be phonemes. Long or short vowels, cat, cake, those are phonemes. And consonant blends such as S, those will be phonemes as well. The phonemes, they can change the meanings of the word, but they don't have meanings themselves. And they can differ by language. So in English, you have 40 phonemes. Hawaiian, they only have 13. In Hindi, they have 60. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about the relationship between age and phonemes. So young children, they are capable of recognizing all phonemes that we know. However, their ability deteriorates after about 9 months if they're not exposed to that phoneme. And this explains why it's harder for you to learn a second language later in life. For example, for me, it's very hard to distinguish Cali and Kelly. For me, I don't distinguish that because when I was younger, we don't have the differences between them. They're very similar. And I still get this confused. Ross and Ross. Did I get it right?
Ross.
Okay. So yeah, at first I just couldn't get that right. I just keep calling my friends the wrong name and they're like, what? But to me, they're so similar that I can't even tell the difference. Okay, so now I want you guys to try to pronounce resign in Chinese. So this is called 辞职. So I'm telling you how to pronounce. Can you pronounce it?
Zuju.
Kind of close. Okay, try again. 辞职. Okay. Do you think you're pronouncing the same as me?
No.
Oh, okay, so you recognize that. Okay, so you still recognize it. But for me, sometimes I don't even recognize it. Right? Another one, let's try this. This is harder. 44. Is it hard? So there are a lot of terms like that when you don't use it when you're younger, or when you are not exposed to them when you're younger. You lose that ability to pronounce it or even recognize it. Okay? So why is that? This is the process called pruning. And that will be the process of removing neurons which eliminate the connections that are not used often enough. This saves some space in the brain so you can learn other things faster. Okay? That's why we encourage people to learn languages at a younger age. Yes?
This is it's kind of related, but not really. I'm just curious, in like Mandarin
Uh-huh.
and languages like that, are there different phonemes for like when the noise is like rising in pitch? Or
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so that's another thing that's kind of confusing for Westerners. Let's say, hello, hello, hello. It's like all the same to you guys, but if it's the same thing in Chinese, different tones means different things.
Okay.
And they represent different characters.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yep. Also, learning languages can help your brain develop better. And a lot of times we think that bilinguals, they have a more developed brain. Oh, how do you say? I don't want to say more developed. It sounds like I'm discriminating. But do you get the idea? Like they have there's no other way to say it. They just have a more developed brain compared to monolinguals. So Learn languages. It's very helpful. Also, it helps with memory, prevents aphasia and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so are those like the symbols, are they letters or are they words?
They are single characters, and then when we combine them, they become a word. By themselves, they also mean something. Okay. Right. Okay. So after phonemes, we have morphemes. That will be the smallest unit of language with meaning. So phonemes was the smallest unit of sound, and this is the smallest unit of language, such as words, prefixes, and suffixes. And like you can have run, wet, and then unhappy, you can add that to it, or you can say run, running, I ran, something like that. And they are the combinations of phonemes. And they do have meanings by themselves. Okay, so you know morphemes, right? Okay.
I
Yes.
have a question, like grunts, like sounds that have meanings but they're not words. Does that fall under any of these?
Can you give me an example?
Like, you know, when someone like groans, it's either they're annoyed or tired.
No, not really. Because when they groan, if you don't have the situation, you don't know what that means. Is it because they're happy or sad, right?
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we have words. Those are the combinations of morphemes, such as running, pre-workout, cake, cat. So words are pretty simple. It's just like the combination of something. Yep.
Aren't words also included in morphemes though?
I want to say words are more complicated. Like words here is like very simple words, but here will be you're adding to it, such as running, stuff like that. Also, you don't need to remember this. You just need to understand them. On the exam, it's not gonna be like very super details. I think you get the idea from the first exam, right? It's not gonna be super
So
details.
maybe like a question, like what are the how many building blocks are there for like?
Not even that, because that's not gonna be useful in your life, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter if you remember how many building blocks are there, but you need to understand what they mean and then analyze them in real life situation. Okay. Next, we have phrases and sentences. Those will be the combinations of words. Now you get the idea, right? So that will be the combinations of phonemes, and that will be the combinations of morphemes, and this is the combination of words. The last one is a little bit different, but we'll talk about that. So the dog is running, that will be a sentence. However, phrases and sentences, they need to follow two rules. First will be syntax. That will be the arrangement of how words are combined to make sentences.
So like grammar.
The second one will be grammar. So that's the entire set of rules for combining symbols and sounds to speak and write a particular language. Okay. All right. They might sound a little similar, but I'm gonna give you some examples. And I don't think you need to distinguish them on the exam.
Let's just get to know the difference.
Yeah, I understand that they follow two rules in sentences. Lastly, we have semantics. That refers to the meaning of the phrase sentences arranged with that structure. Okay, I'm going to give you some example to understand this. So this is the rule that govern the meaning of words and sentence. And sometimes sentences can follow syntax but not make sense. Okay, I'm gonna show you one example here. So the dog is running around the house. But now do you imagine the dog is running around the house inside the house or around outside the house? Right? Can be either, right? So that explains sometimes we have different meanings, different interpretations with one sentence. Okay. So language structures. We have surface structures that refers to the surface meaning of the word stringings produce. And then we have deep structures that refers to the abstract relationships. And that explains why one sentence can have two meanings. Okay, so here's an example. Students cook and serve grandparents. And usually we know what that means, right? But if you think about it, it can mean something else. Kids with gas eat free. Do you get this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Have the kids shot for dad from something. I don't even understand this one.
Have kids shoot for, it's like have the kids shoot instead of dad, something like that.
Oh, wait, it's a studio.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. You get the idea, right? Surface structures and deep structures. Okay. So question, the sign here violates an important organization of language, and which is it? Children must accompany parents. Don't overthink.
Semantics?
Very good, semantics. So there's nothing wrong with the words, right? They are right, phonemes right, morphemes are right, so semantics. Okay, very good. Okay, so humans are good at perceiving languages. We use bottom-up process and top-down process. Do you remember that? Okay. What kind of process is this?
Top down, I think.
Okay. What do you guys think?
I would say top down because we can see that cat is written even though each constituent part doesn't necessarily spell out cat.
Okay, very good. Do you guys agree? Because you have your past experience, you know the terms, the cat. So even though this is ambiguous, you can still interpret that using past experience, so that would be top down. If it's just the first time you see it, you're trying to piece information together, that would be bottom up. Okay?
So bottom up is when it's something new, but top down is when you're like using past experiences.
Yep. Okay. We also use nonverbal cues such as faces, gestures, and body language to help us perceive language. Right? And do you remember this?
Yeah.
McGurk effect? Okay. That's when the cues don't agree with each other. So we'll be confused about what other people are trying to communicate. Okay. Very good. Next, we are going to talk about language development. So that will be the lifespan of, not lifespan, but the years of a child growing up. So from 6 months to 12 months, they are trying to learn phonemes, so they can create some meaningless sounds, such as ooh, so that would be cooing and babbling. Okay. And then 9 months, that's when pruning starts. If they don't use that phonemes, they're not exposed to that phonemes, they got rid of that neural connections. And then first year to 18 months, that's called the one-word stage. This is when they produce single words like no, mama, tata, something like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Next will be 18 to 30 months. That's when they have the two-word stage, such as my ball, go away. They don't say like go away, they say go away, something like that. So the two-word stage. And then after that will be the sentence phase. They start to speak languages in more like a grammatic terms. Okay. And I don't think you need to memorize this for the exam either, but just understand when you see kids, you can know which stage they are. It's not like saying everyone follows this. I think my mom says that I didn't speak until I was like 2 years old. So I was very slow. It could be normal, it could not. So if they're not following this like majority phenomenon, you might want to get the kids to check out or something. Just some knowledge that you should have. Okay, we have critical period. This is from birth to about age 12. If children are not exposed to any human language before this period, they can never fully develop the language ability. So they learned this from a case study called Jeannie Wiley. Do you guys know this person? A little bit? Okay, I'll show you a video. So in the video, I want you to think about why did they say it's age 12 for the critical period? And also think about why did she learn language at age 13? Also think about the limitation of this theory, critical period. So they developed this using the case study. Okay. All right, let's take a look.
For 13 years, Jeannie had lived a life of complete isolation. Raised in a city bedroom, Jeannie was as much a feral child as if she had been brought up by wolves. At 13, she was the size of a 6-year-old. Worst of all, she had never been taught to speak. The question now, could she ever learn? Jeannie's case was so scientifically important that the government funded a team of scientists to help answer the many questions she posed. Two of the scientists who would become especially important to Jeannie were child psychologist James Kent and linguist Susan Curtis.
So wonderful. So good.
Neither had ever encountered a case as extreme as Jeannie's.
We looked at her as a newborn in a way, even though we know she hadn't. She came with 13 years of memories and experiences, not all of them wonderful, most of them not, I think. And so we thought we needed to start to expose her to what the world was going to be like for her outside the hospital bed.
To Jeannie, everything was a new experience.
We did what you would do with your own kids if you were introducing them to the world. You'd take them out and hold them up and show them, and sort of judge from how they reacted to whether this was too much or not enough, and you could move on and do the next thing.
Jeannie was making amazing progress. As the experts looked on, they realized that she might be the answer to the question that had troubled science for so long.
So we seized this wonderful opportunity that she provided us in as loving a way as we could, but using it to finally get our chance to address head-on specific hypotheses and notions about human language and the human mind.
These hypotheses were based on the latest ideas about how children's brains developed. According to the theory, young children could only learn certain things at certain times, called critical periods. Language was one of these critical periods, and according to the theory, Jeannie, who was now a teenager, had missed her chance forever. But incredibly, Jeannie seemed to be proving the theory wrong. As this footage shows, Jeannie was blossoming. Not only was she delighted by the world around her, but she was learning the words for the new things she was seeing.
She was extremely interested in everything around her. She wanted to know the word for everything around her. She wanted to engage people all around her. She was not mentally deficient. Her lights were on, and everyone who worked with her, from teachers to therapists to me, knew that she was not retarded. It was clear as day. And as she began to learn more and more words, hundreds of words, much more rapidly than I ever imagined, and stringing them together, I began to think maybe I will be wrong. Maybe she will be the one that will prove that this hypothesis is incorrect.
But Jeannie could not escape the effects of her past so easily. She was still haunted by her traumatic upbringing, trapped by the memories of the awful fate she had suffered. And linguistically, she had stopped making progress.
She learned tons of words. She has an enormous vocabulary. But language is not words. Language is grammar. Language is sentences. How do you make a sentence? What can be a sentence? What is a sentence? How do you automatically know something's a sentence? So it wasn't because she was cognitively deficient. In other respects, it was because she was cognitively deficient in this island of human mind, the mental faculty that we call grammar.
At the time Jeannie was found, brain science was in its infancy. But today, we have a much clearer picture of what actually happens in cases of extreme neglect like Jeannie's.
In Jeannie's brain, the left part of her brain, her cortex, that has those neural systems responsible for speech and language, because she never heard any words and because she was never spoken to very often, they didn't get stimulated. And because they weren't stimulated, they got smaller and less functional and disconnected, and ultimately that part of the brain literally physically changes.
Today, with modern imaging technology, we can actually see what happens in the brains of feral children, and the effects are shocking. Without normal stimulation, their brains are smaller and malformed, and the earlier this neglect begins and the longer it carries on, the worse the damage will be. Starved of stimulation, Jeannie's brain had simply not developed the capacity for language. And now that she was a teenager, she would never be able to learn. Despite this, Jeannie continued to be a close part of everyone's life. But there was more trouble ahead.
Children have to belong to somebody when they grow up, and she was still a child, and she needed a family to belong to. So that's what we would have liked, a family that she could belong to. And that's not what happened, unfortunately. What did happen is about the worst outcome I think we would have envisioned.
On her 18th birthday, Jeannie moved back with her mother, Irene, into the house in which she had been so terribly abused. But after only a few weeks, it was clear that Irene couldn't cope. From here, Jeannie was moved into state care with terrible consequences.
I was a student, and people wouldn't listen to me. People who needed to intervene did not listen to me. And so I spent lots and lots of time on the phone pleading with people to intervene and save this person who had had the worst experience of deprivation and isolation in all recorded medical history.
Jeannie moved from home to home, sometimes with the very people who served as her therapists. This potential conflict of interests raised tensions among the many people involved in her life, and a tug of war erupted over the child. As Jeannie's condition deteriorated, Irene decided that Susan Curtis and the other academics had become too close to Jeannie. A lawsuit followed.
I went from being asked to be her guardian to 1 week later being prevented from seeing her or phoning her. And ever since then, I've been prevented from having any contact at all. So although I have lots of, I'm still a scientist, I'm still interested in knowing things about her language now and all kinds of interesting things I would like to pursue academically. Primarily, I would just like to see her.
Now, a ward of the court, Jeannie lives in an adult care home somewhere in Los Angeles.
Okay. So,
when was this? Like 2000?
I forgot. So my general thought is so you guys know like the conflicts of interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't like it. You see, the scientist, the researcher, she was talking about this all smiling and she's not sad. I didn't like it. And when she said that this opportunity was like a wonderful opportunity for them to study language, I was like, I don't know. So as a scientist, you can publish stuff by studying these children, and are you really showing love or do you really feel bad for them? It's hard to tell from her interview. Okay, so why did they hypothesize the age 12?
I think it's just the rate of pruning, maybe. Like by the time they're 12, that area for like language has pruned enough that it can't be recovered.
Okay.
I mean, I think part of it is just a case study, and that was the one case that they had where she couldn't really develop, the ability because she was 13 and that was past that threshold, so they just had to choose that number.
Exactly. That's the only case that they have. So they determined, okay, that's the age 12. So you guys kind of see the limitation, right? Okay, so did she learn language at 13? And do you think that words count as language? Yeah.
I thought so until this class, that words were like
right? Because I think that's also language. Maybe it's not like complete language, but I think it's language.
Yeah, I think like understand. No, sorry. I think just like understanding what words are, that's part of the language. Like for example, like with Chinese, you showed us the words. I would have never known what that word was till you told us, and that's still a language though. And like
Yes.
be able to like understand that word as equals that.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, there are a lot of people who say that like math is a language as well, and it's not really like, it doesn't have the same meaning as we normally attribute to a language, yet we all can still like communicate through it. So I feel like it's a language in the fact that you can communicate ideas using it, even if you can't make coherent sentences. Like you can tell someone milk, and they will know that you want milk. So it's still a language, but I feel like they're missing a big part of the human part of language. Where it's more than just, you know, asking for simple things. There's not as much meaning attributed to it. They can't make complex ideas in the same way.
I think a good example of that also is like music. I've seen like people. I've seen like I went to this event where it was like a open like band, and there was like a band from like Mexico, right? Or that only speaks Spanish, and there's English people there. And this band that only speak English and this band that only speaks Spanish, they started playing together without just like not being able to communicate like language wise, but they were able to play like a full like song, like improv song, play proper songs by just knowing how music works.
Exactly. You're gonna say something?
In the video, didn't she claim that language needs grammar though at one point?
Yeah, that's what she said.
I feel like that's wrong in a way.
What kind? It depends on what field she's in. I forgot whether she's like a linguistic or something. But in psychology, in my opinion, I think that's language.
It's just
Music needs grammar in order for you to be able to consider it music. Otherwise, you just have random notes. I mean, unless you want to be really avant-garde, but I feel like it's like in that sense, music is only language because it has grammar as well, or grammar in the sense it has technique.
I feel like based on like psychology, the definition of psychology that we've just seen, it can apply to a lot of things, like how you said, like math, music, and all. But it said she was a linguistic.
I don't know.
No, it did. It like
Okay.
said, I read her title, and then I think like a linguistic definition is different. Like it has to have language, it has to have structure.
Yep. So what's the limitation of this hypothesis of critical period?
There's just one person.
A case study. Okay. It might not generalize to other people. Okay. Oh, it's right there. I don't remember I wrote it.
You're like, oh, look,
memory.
I'm smart.
Any questions? Yes.
So with that critical period, is it really just because of that, like part of the brain needs to be developed in order for them to be able to?
It's still a hypothesis.
That's what
We don't know for
hypothesis
sure.
was.
One sec. So one thing that I get from this this video is that we now have a lot of single parenthood, right? It's a lot, and that creates a lot of opportunities for neglect because you just don't have enough time for the kids. And that's really bad. It can cause permanent damage. Like you see the brain structures are different, are altered because of this neglect. So I know sometimes it's like hard to say, oh, you shouldn't get a divorce or something. It's bad for the kids, but everyone's different situations. But now we know there's a correlation, there's a relationship. I think people should be more careful when they are choosing their partners, when they deciding whether they should get a divorce. What kind of harms can cause to this kid? Like it's lifelong. Yeah.
Okay, but on like the opposite end of that, don't you think like a bad home, like with two parents, could be equally as bad?
Yep. So that's why they need to have someone else to intervene. For example, if you know a kid is being neglected, if you know a kid is being abused, the parents might not have the time or energy to deal with that, but maybe other people can intervene. They can tell them, okay, you should do this, you should do that. Maybe they can get the social workers to get intervened instead of we don't know what to do, it's their own business, stuff like that. Yep.
Do you know if there's like a rate for pruning? Like at what rate does the neuron start disintegrate? Like not like start like getting smaller so that eventually it disconnects? Like do you know if there's like a rate for that? Like or no?
There's a way.
A rate. Like,
A rate?
Yeah, like a rate of like pruning. Like it takes this much
Oh
time.
no, I don't think we know because we can't really do like precise experiments on people. Yes.
So, I guess with the whole thing with the ability to recognize phonemes being pruned over time, so that means that like when someone learns a language, you know, later in their life, is it impossible to become fully fluent in that, or do you think that it just takes more time?
It takes more time. It takes longer for you to rebuild that connection. Learning is you're building new neural connections. So it just takes longer. I wouldn't say like I'm like super fluent in English, but I'm kind of fluent.
You're
But
pretty fluent, I would
Yeah,
say.
I don't.
yes,
Is it
and
possible to recover from pruning and recover like?
it's possible. I didn't learn English until I was 9 or 10 years old. That's when I first got exposed to English, and then through practice, I got better at it and better at it. And then I think people can still learn languages at a later stage. So yeah, it's never too late. Yes.
Do you think through living in the U.S., there's been pruning for like, you know, your first language? Like, do you think that you've lost ability with it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't think so, because I don't really, so I speak both Cantonese and Mandarin. I haven't speak Cantonese for like years. But now if I see someone who speaks Cantonese, I can still speak it. I don't know, no problems. However, it would be hard for me to convey my ideas in psychology, because everything that I learned is in English, right? I did not learn psychology in Chinese. I didn't get exposed to psychology in Chinese. So now if I want to teach psychology in China, it would be harder for me. But it's not like I lose that ability, right? I just don't know how to translate.
Wait, can you explain that? Does it make sense? Like, couldn't you just like translate it?
Yeah, but it will take so much time, right? I need to find out each term. How do I say that? Like, phoneme.
Yeah,
What's the Chinese term? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, that
What's
makes sense.
morphine? Yeah.
It doesn't come out more fluent. Like I speak Spanish, and I went to like summer school in Mexico for
Actually, we don't have much time, but
Yeah.
we'll get your share after this. Okay. So language and thoughts. Language influences how we think. How would you describe this color?
It's like degrading blue.
Blue, right? So because in English, this looks like purple here, but it's blue on the slides. If you go to your computer slide, it's blue. Like everything is blue. However, in Russian, they can distinguish dark blue and light blue. They call this sini and this glunvoy. And in their brain, they can distinguish that because they have to. In their culture, in their language, they have two different terms. So when they're exposed to different colors, their brain reacts to them differently. But now if I just show you blue, like the same area, blue will react in your brain because your language only have one word for that. Okay, this is another example. So in German and in Spanish, they assign gender to pronouns, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in German, the sun is feminine and Spanish is masculine. And the moon is the opposite. Okay?
Yeah.
Do you think that it will affect how they think about the sun and moon?
Yeah.
You think so, right? Okay, very good. So here's an example. If you ask them to describe a bridge, we found that Germans, they're more likely to use the terms like beautiful and elegant because it's a feminine term in German. But for Hispanic or Spanish speakers, they tend to use terms like strong and big because it's a masculine term in Spanish. Okay? All right. Also, language guides our reasoning. So for example, if I say she hit him versus she smacked him, you have different mental image, right? When a car, you say a car hit another car, or when a car crashed to another car, you have different mental images. So it guides our reasoning. Okay, so I'm gonna briefly talk about cognition and reasoning. So cognition is the mental activity, such as acquiring, processing, and storing knowledge that goes on in the brain when a person is processing information. Okay. So including organizing, understanding, and communicating to other people. So that's cognition. Reasoning is the process of drawing inferences or conclusions from principles and evidence. So those are just basic definitions for you to understand what is cognition, what is reasoning, and we're going to talk about that more in the next class. Okay, so we have some time. If you guys want to leave early, you can, but if you guys want to talk about that extra credit opportunity, you can try to persuade the class. So now I thought about something that I can get benefits. So if I win, you get 1 extra credit to your exam.
If you win.
No, if you win. If I win, you need to find a representative to go to rate my professor, write me a good review. Is that a deal? You can try to persuade your classmates.
Okay, I can do that.
All right. I think someone else plays basketball too. They wrote that in their introduction at the beginning of the class. They're like, they play basketball.
Yeah.
So you guys can play one-on-one first and find the best player, and then, or you can be the representative.
Site 107 at the rec.
Oh, I'm not playing at the rec. Too many people are there. We should find like an open space and max song too. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what other people think for online students, but let me know.
The thing you said about trying to teach like in Mandarin and psychology, I completely get that. Like I speak Spanish and I went to like this engineering camp in like Mexico and everything was in Spanish and it took me a lot longer to be able to like take in the information and like understand what they were saying. And whenever I had to like present my project, it took me a little longer to like I had to practice it when normally I wouldn't have to practice it and like practice like what words I would have to use.
Yeah. Yep. So if you're bilingual, you will have a better understanding on this. Okay. All right. That's it. Won't see you tomorrow, but next week. Thank you. Thank you, guys.